This week, I'm looking at 5 exciting NBA sophomores and trying to figure out which veterans started out their careers with similar numbers. Let's go prospecting. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Market Movers video. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as T-Pott, and this week I'm doing a little bit of NBA prospecting. Now, this isn't quite the prospecting when you think of like baseball and the minor leagues and Bowman. It's not so easy in basketball. You know, these players, they start the hype the minute they're drafted, or well before that, if you think about college scenarios. They get drafted, their cards aren't produced until much later, and by the time they're released, they're already extremely expensive. So what kind of prospecting can you actually do with basketball players? Well, this week I want to look at 5 NBA sophomores and try to take a look at what kind of numbers have they been putting up so far in their career, and what other veterans might they actually compare to in a worst case scenario and a best case scenario. So let's jump over and take a look. All right, so one thing I'd like to point out is that when you think about baseball players, these guys are drafted sometimes out of high school, sometimes out of college. There's a billion different rounds. You know, the draft happens in the middle of the Major League Baseball season. It just happened this year. And you get these Bowman products, Bowman First, Bowman Draft. There's a whole bunch of ways you can sort of get out in front of baseball players, especially if you're savvy and you're really into the minor leagues. One of our affiliates, RydOg54, has a great channel where every single week he's breaking down recaps of the best players and the most notable performances in baseball. So definitely go and give RydOg a follow if you're into that for baseball. But when we think about basketball, it's not quite so easy, like I was saying. So how can we go about prospecting? Well, the first thing that I did is I just went and looked at the 2019 NBA draft, and I wanted to see, you know, kind of what kind of players could we be thinking about, and how many are there that we could be thinking about investing in from that particular draft class. So I just pulled it up on Basketball Reference, and I sorted by points. You could sort by, you know, win shares. You could sort by all kinds of statistics. But if you sort by points, obviously, no surprise, you're getting Zion Williamson and Ja right at the top. And then you get RJ Barrett, Darius, Garland, Hero. And this list goes all the way down. I mean, I went to number 35, where some people are still really kind of considering and pretty high on Matisse Thybulle. Obviously, he's not an offensive, superstar, but he is a really, really talented defender. And I've heard a lot of scouts and a lot of NBA coaches say that it's much easier to teach offense later than it is to teach defense. So anyway, people kind of way down below. Some of these guys could potentially emerge later. And one notable player here for me is Terance Mann, who obviously showed some serious flashes in the playoffs. When Kawhi went down, he had that monster performance. What was it, like 39 points or something? I might be misremembering the exact number, but it was a huge performance. And he kind of came out of nowhere. So one thing you can do within Market Movers is to actually go into price movements. And we have a new feature called a rookie card toggle, and I'll show you what that looks like. So what I did was I came into price movements by player, and I filtered by sport, basketball, year 2019, PSA 10 grade, Prism as my set, and silver as my variation. And then I've checked this little rookie card only toggle, and what that's going to do is only show me rookie cards. It's not going to show me the other veteran silvers that we have in here, like Coby and LeBron. It's just going to show the rookie cards. And if I go over these different, time frames to see what's been happening with the price movements for different players, I can go back to the last 180 days and I can see that the only player who's up in this time frame is Kevin Porter Jr. Everybody else is down. We know a big part of that is the overall market pullback. Some people are calling it a crash. There's been a huge leveling off in the very least. And so you can kind of scroll through some of these prices, but it's a little more revealing to go to like the last 60 and see that, some of these players that suddenly have some buzz around them. Darius Garland's looking like he's maybe the guy in Cleveland. There's rumors of Colin Sexton being moved. Cam Reddish had a great performance in that last game for Atlanta, even though they got knocked out. Cameron Johnson just posterized somebody. And then you've obviously got Terance Mann, and you can keep scrolling down to the list. So what I did was I picked 5 players that I'm kind of interested in seeing, okay, so far, who do their statistics compare to in terms of other veterans, let's say from the last 15 years or so in the NBA, and try to project, what do we think is going to potentially happen with their career path? What's the precedent for a player of their caliber with their sorts of statistics so far to vault into a higher position, a much more prestigious position in the league where their card prices might go up? So I pulled up RJ Barrett, Darius Garland, Cameron Johnson, Coby White, and Terance Mann. and I looked at their prices and I sorted them, from greatest to least. And you can scroll up and see here on this bar chart too, just to kind of visualize. RJ Barrett at the top, $365. Darius Garland right after him. Then Cameron Johnson, who has gone up significantly in the last few weeks or so. Coby White, who has fallen the most out of any of these players by far from last year. And then you've got Terance Mann, obviously kind of coming up the rear, his prices moving in a positive direction. So let's jump over and take these cards, take these players one by one and do some comparisons. All right, first on the list, RJ Barrett. We got his silver prism here, $365, pop $999. Barrett's 6'6", 214 pounds. He kind of plays that, small forward, power forward role. And if you look at 538's, projections for him, they're calling him an up-and-comer. And the projections don't look terrible. They give you these confidence intervals to see, what the best case scenario in their mind is. And obviously these are not foolproof, but I do like to use this. Jeff's used this information, this data in previous episodes on Sports Card Investor channel. It's a nice benchmark to sort of see, like, what are the analysts thinking in terms of these players' performance. Not terrible, not spectacular either necessarily, but you do see some high upside, pushing into the potentially into the 8 to 9 wins above replacement projection range. So we've got RJ Barrett. What's the best case scenario for RJ Barrett in terms of who else he could play like? And I'm going to show you the numbers for these. Best case scenario, I would say, and this is absolute best case scenario, is Jason Tatum. You look at their body frame, Tatum's a similar height, a little bit taller. I think he's grown in the last few years, actually. And I think he's got a little bit longer wingspan than Barrett. I could be wrong about that. Both of these guys, sort of those long wing type players, who are capable of scoring. Worst case scenario, Tyreke Evans. Do you remember Tyreke Evans? I think he won Rookie of the Year. I know he was really good for the first several years of his career. Kind of a two-way type player. He could, pass, he could rebound, he could do a little bit of everything. So if we look at their statistics, you'll see RJ Barrett, Tyreke Evans, and Jason Tatum. These are their sophomore statistics for all three of these players. And you can see that Tatum was averaging the fewest points out of the three of these guys. But overall, very similar numbers. Tyreke with, far more assists than these other two guys. And you obviously see that his scoring efficiency wasn't quite so high. But numbers very comparable for Barrett and for Jason Tatum at this point in their career. So what do I think is going to happen? Which one do I think is more probable? I don't know. I honestly would leave that up to you. If you're thinking about investing in RJ Barrett, which player's, career trajectory do you think he's more likely to resemble? Do you think it's Tyreke Evans? Do you think it's Jason Tatum? Do you think it's maybe, somewhere over here where he's going to be closer to Tatum than he is to Tyreke Evans, even if you don't think he's sort of that next generational talent like Tatum is showing he's becoming? It's really tough to tell. I would say RJ Barrett in terms of investment potential at his current price point. There's obviously the rumors that he's potentially going to be a trade piece if New York's looking to upgrade. Colin Sexton ends up getting traded to New York. That could eat into some of Barrett's offensive scoring potential. You already have Julius Randle commanding a lot of that offensive share there. So remains to be seen with Barrett. So I'm kind of a hold on RJ Barrett right now. I do have a few of his cards. I'm not looking to move them anytime soon. I want to see how his career continues to progress. Next player on the list, Darius Garland, 6'1", 192 pounds. Garland's current PSA 10 silver is at $241, pop $784. And let's see what 538 says. Not the best projections for Garland. And I'm going to tell you, of the 5 players that I have on here, this is the one that I disagree with the most, and I'm going to show you why. I just really disagree with this. They have him as a project. Now, Garland, not a great defender, needs to really, really work on his defense, or he's ultimately going to be just an undersized liability on the court. But I do think he's got potential to improve, and I think he's got a lot of potential to be a great scorer and facilitator. So who does Garland most compare to? I would say of all the players, I think Darius Garland most compares in terms of ultimate upside to Chris Paul, to a player like Chris Paul. They're similar height, similar mindset, kind of a pass-first player, but they can score efficiently. And in worst case scenario, I might say a player like Deron Williams. And Deron Williams was good for a number of years. He was very good for a number of years. So if we look at these statistics, I didn't just stack these two guys. I wanted to show you. I put a filter into Basketball Reference, and what I did was I put in at least 16 points per game and at least 6 assists per game for sophomores, for any sophomores going back to like 2005. And what you see here is a pretty impressive list of players. Now, John Wall's career derailed by injuries. Darren Williams kind of fell off later in his career. But these other guys, De'Aaron Fox, Chris Paul, obviously Russell Westbrook, he's in pretty good company here if you're just looking at his offense. Now, he is not quite facilitating yet like some of these guys were at that point. But if you look at his true shooting percentage, very, very impressive. So Darius Garland has the ability to be kind of a true offensive facilitator for the Cleveland Cavs, and it'll remain to be seen what other pieces they can bring in and put around him. But I'm actually somewhat high on Darius Garland, and I do think that if he becomes the guy there, and depending on who else they can draft this year, there could be more buzz around Garland, and you could see him take a big leap forward next season, get his assist numbers up maybe around the 8 range, get his scoring into 21 to 22 points. That could really, really help Darius Garland's card prices. So Cameron Johnson, 6'8", 210 pounds. His silver is up now to $185 for a PSA 10. Pop 298. So lower population for Cameron Johnson, obviously, than Barrett and Garland. And if you look at what the projections are on 538, not particularly impressive. They have him as a rotation player. If you would have asked me a week ago, what do I think about Cameron Johnson? In fact, I was commenting on one of the episodes filling in for Jeff a few weeks back. I would view him as a rotation player. Great outside shooter, phenomenal outside shooter, and a rotation player. He's going to fill in. He's okay on the defensive end. He's somewhat athletic. That dunk shocked me. I didn't know he had that in him. I know it's just one dunk, but that showed me that he's got some tenacity and some capability and some athletic potential that I didn't realize Cameron Johnson really had. So I am kind of intrigued, not at the recent price surges, but if I see his prices come down in the offseason, I might be inclined to try to pick up a PSA 9 silver or something. So who do I think that Cameron Johnson compares to? Best case scenario, Kawhi Leonard. I don't think he's going to be Kawhi Leonard, but I'll show you the stats to kind of back up why Kawhi Leonard comes up as the best case scenario. And this guy, anybody know who that is? Probably not, maybe a few of you. That's Landry Fields. Landry Fields, Cameron Johnson, Kawhi Leonard, not super impressive sophomore numbers. Nothing like Darius Garland or RJ Barrett. 9 points, basically. And if you look at the effective field goal percentage, you look at the rebounds, you can kind of see some similarities on these players. Obviously, stark difference in terms of where these guys' careers went. Kawhi being one of the best players in the NBA, basically since he was drafted, or really since he emerged, at least with the Spurs. Landry Fields, nobody knows where he is now. So what do I think is going to happen with Cameron Johnson? I honestly have no idea on this one. Like I said, I might be watching his card prices in the offseason. If they dip, I might look to get in, although I don't think they'll really be falling too much based on the Suns being in the finals and that dunk that he threw down on Tucker. All right, Coby White, 6'5", 195 pounds, tons of spring in his step. He's fun, he's flashy. A year ago, I was ripping Coby White cards and the prices that they were at and saying this is completely unjustified. Multiple times in my weekly card buy and sell, I was saying I'm a sell on Coby White. They were way too expensive, and we have seen his card prices come down catastrophically this last year. $155, pop $12.99, and you can see that was because there was so much hype around this guy when he was drafted, and last year, again, as he was just sort of, jacking up shots from all over the court. 538 says he's an up-and-comer, and they kind of have him projected in the same range as RJ Barrett in terms of upside and confidence interval, almost touching to that 10 range. I can't say I disagree necessarily. Coby White, again, I think he's also a big defensive liability, and his shooting is extremely streaky. But the one thing with shooters is that if they can figure it out, and if they can become more consistent, they can go from being really mediocre or a liability in a team to being the number one option on the offensive side. So if I'm looking at who does Coby White remind me of, I've kind of said this all along that Jamal Murray, I think, is the best analog to Coby White. They're similar in size, they're similar in athleticism, they're similar in attack and the way that they move, similar offensive, shot selection and stuff. Murray kind of emerged a little bit later in his career, and so we'll see that the numbers actually line up here too. Remember this guy? Maybe you remember this guy more than Landry Fields. OJ Mayo, obviously sensation at USC in college, and OJ Mayo was good for a few years in the NBA. So if you look at the statistics here, you can see OJ Mayo, sophomore season, 17.5 points. Jamal Murray, 16.7. Coby White, 15.1. Guys similar in size. Jamal Murray's a little bit smaller, but he plays a little bit bigger than 6'3" in my opinion. And you can see, rebounds similar, points similar. Coby White, a few more assists per game, and then you can kind of see that their shooting numbers also very similar. So OJ Mayo looked great early in his career, fell off. Jamal Murray looked pretty good early in his career and has continued to get better and better and better. So it remains to be seen what Coby White can do. I do have more confidence in that new coaching staff with Billy Donovan. The Bulls look to be making some moves in the right direction. Coby White definitely figures, you got to think, to be a part of that. If Zach LaVine ends up getting traded or moved, Coby White's going to have to step up. There's also the possibility that they could look to trade a guy like Coby White if they want to lock LaVine into a long-term deal. So let's watch and see what happens with Coby White. His prices are down so much now. I kind of feel like it's hard to go wrong. I might be looking to pick up some Coby White cards. Last but not least, Terance Mann. Now, I like Terance Mann. I'm just going to say that right now. I like watching him. He's the type of player I would like to have on my team on the Pistons. He's a hustle guy. He's efficient. He's got a great box plus minus. That always shows up when they're talking about it in the playoffs. $113 for his Prism Silver, pop 162. It's kind of come out of nowhere. Not a lot of these graded so far. And it remains to be seen how many more will be able to get a gem rate if they are sent into PSA over the next year. Now 538 says he's not going to be doing much. Rotation player, kind of flatline for a number of years. Expect him to be on NBA rosters contributing. Don't expect to hear his name a huge amount unless maybe he's filling in for injuries. That's what they're saying. Who does Terance Mann compare to? Best case scenario, and I would go back and say this is kind of like comparing Cameron Johnson to Kawhi Leonard. Jimmy Butler, best case scenario. I don't think that's going to happen. Worst case scenario, a little bit different here. Again, I ran some statistics. I was doing, more than 7 points per game and more than, I think, 3.5 rebounds a game. And this is the list that it came up with. And what you can see is that you've got Bruce Brown, who showed some signs of improvement this year, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a number one option in the NBA. You got Jimmy Butler near the top of this list, and then the rest of these guys. Josh Okogie, Glenn Azubuike, Markelle Fultz, who's been injured, Murray, and you kind of go down this list. Not a lot to be excited about. This is where you're looking for historical precedent. You're looking for some reason to believe in this guy and to say, somebody else has done this. Somebody else has started their career with a similar draft, status, with a similar size, with similar numbers, and has gone on to do great things. Not really. I had to dig and I had to modify this. Butler was up pushing, near 9 points a game, not 7 points a game. We've seen Mann can score, like I said, and we've seen he can play defense. So a guy like that is always going to have opportunities, like those projections showed. I just don't like his odds and the company that he's in terms of his statistical performance so far. I'm definitely a wait and see on a guy like Terance Mann. All right, so quick video. Hopefully that was interesting and insightful. Just kind of trying to give you an insight into my thought process. I always like to think about these analogs. You hear a lot of those comparisons when the draft happens. This is the guy we think he compares to. They tend to only compare the high end. They don't tend to go, and here's the floor for this particular player, because they're just trying to hype up and create a lot of marketing around these players. But it's important to be realistic, and it's important to think about these things and not just kind of get sucked into a big monster dunk or a 39-point performance, but also to think what might actually happen with these guys as more players come into the league over the next few years, as other players develop and take up roster spots. It's hard to say. If you liked this video, please give it a like down below, a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. If you're interested in market movers, go to marketmoversapp.com, or you can go to the App Store and download the Market Movers app for free. It's absolutely free to try. Give it a whirl and let us know what you think. And leave me your comments down below. Which players are you the highest on from the 2019 class, and who would you compare them to? Till next time, happy investing.